In a small-town garage where dreams go to be rebuilt, Mike Sullivan is about to discover that some restoration projects change more than just metal and chrome. When a mysterious '67 Mustang Fastback rolls into his shop, he sees it as just another chance to keep his struggling business afloat and provide for his daughter. What he doesn't know is that this car belongs to Catherine Brooks, the woman who broke his heart 20 years ago, now the CEO of a billion-dollar empire. She spent years tracking down this exact Mustang, but it's not just the car she's come to reclaim. This isn't just another love story. This is about how fate uses a classic car to reunite two souls who never stopped wondering, what if? And how sometimes the road back to love requires a full restoration of the heart. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The scent of coffee mingled with motor oil as Mike Sullivan switched on the lights in his kitchen. It was 5:30 a.m., the same time he'd woken up every day for the past 12 years, ever since Emily was born. The morning ritual never changed. Coffee first, then Emily's lunch, followed by a quick check of the ever-growing stack of bills that seemed to multiply in the darkness like weeds. He pulled out the worn red toolbox from beneath the kitchen sink. Sarah's toolbox, Emily's mother's legacy. His fingers traced the scratched metal surface as he retrieved the electrical tape he needed to fix Emily's alarm clock. Again, the old house had temperamental wiring, but moving wasn't an option. Not with the workshop's mortgage eating away at every spare dollar. "Dad?" Emily's voice drifted down from upstairs, followed by the soft padding of sock-covered feet on hardwood. "Is my clock broken again?" Mike smiled, setting the toolbox on the counter. At 12, Emily was already showing signs of inheriting both her parents' mechanical intuition. "Just needs a little TLC, kiddo. Come down and I'll show you how to fix it yourself this time." She appeared in the doorway, her dark hair a mess of tangles, wearing the oversized vintage Ford t-shirt he'd given her for her last birthday. Emily made her way to the counter, pulling up a stool with practiced familiarity. Mike watched as she automatically reached for the toolbox, her movements mirroring Sarah's with an accuracy that sometimes took his breath away. "First rule of fixing anything," Mike began, their morning mantra, "is understanding how it broke." Emily finished, already opening the clock's casing with careful precision. "Mom's rules, right?" "That's right." Mike turned to pour her a glass of orange juice, hiding the catch in his throat. "Your mom could fix anything she set her mind to." Emily worked in silence for a few moments, her small fingers navigating the clock's inner workings with growing confidence. "Dad, Tommy's dad says the shop might have to close. Is that true?" Mike's hand stilled on the refrigerator door. "Trust a kid to cut straight to the heart of what keeps you up at night." He turned, meeting his daughter's worried gaze. "Tommy's dad needs to mind his own business," he said gently. "The shop's just going through a rough patch. Nothing we can't handle." But Emily, like her mother, had always been too perceptive for her own good. She glanced at the stack of bills on the counter, then back at the clock in her hands. "Maybe I could help out after school. I'm getting pretty good at organizing the tools, and Mrs. Henderson says I'm the best at math in my class." Pride and pain twisted in Mike's chest. He crossed the kitchen and dropped a kiss on top of her head. "You focus on being 12, sweetheart. That's your job right now. Besides," he added, injecting cheerfulness into his voice, "we've got that classic Mustang coming in today. One good restoration project can turn everything around." Emily's eyes lit up. "A real Mustang? What year?" "'67 Fastback, the holy grail of restoration projects." Mike pulled out ingredients for pancakes, their traditional Tuesday breakfast. "The client's paying top dollar, too. This could be exactly what we need." As he mixed the batter, Mike's thoughts drifted to the mysterious phone call he'd received about the car. The client's representative had been vague about details, but crystal clear about the budget. More money than he'd seen in one project since opening Sullivan's classic restorations. It felt like a lifeline, thrown just when he was about to go under. Emily had moved on to examining the toolbox itself, her fingers tracing the engraved initials on the bottom, SMT, Sarah Marie Thompson. "Tell me again how Mum used to help you restore cars," she said, a request she made at least once a week. Mike poured batter onto the griddle, letting the familiar story wrap around them both like a comfort blanket. "Your mom was the best mechanic I ever knew. Could diagnose an engine problem just by listening to it purr, or not purr, as the case may be. We met in high school, both of us oil-stained and stubborn, arguing over the best way to rebuild a transmission." He paused, frowning. For a moment, another face had flashed through his memory. Not Sarah's, but someone from before. Someone he hadn't thought about in years. He shook his head, flipping the pancakes with perhaps more force than necessary. "Dad, you okay?" "Just fine, kiddo." Mike stacked the pancakes on Emily's favorite plate, the one with classic cars around the rim. "Eat up. We've got a big day ahead of us." As Emily drenched her pancakes in syrup, Mike glanced at the stack of bills again. The foreclosure warning was on top, its red lettering visible through the thin envelope. One more month, maybe two, before he'd have to make some hard decisions. But looking at Emily, happily chattering about the Mustang and her ideas for helping with the restoration, Mike felt a familiar determination settle over him. He'd figured out how to be a single parent when Sarah died. He'd learned to braid hair, cook meals that weren't burnt, and navigate the treacherous waters of preteen girl emotions. He'd keep the shop open somehow. He had to. The Mustang was coming. Today. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the project that changed everything. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the steel and glass of the Brooks Technologies Tower. But Catherine Brooks had been in her office long before dawn. From 40 stories up, her hometown looked like a miniature model of itself, small enough to fit in the palm of her hand. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, absently twisting the platinum watch on her wrist, a gift to herself when she'd closed her first billion-dollar deal. "Ms. Brooks!" Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "They're ready. And for you in the boardroom." Catherine straightened her shoulders, smoothing down her tailored charcoal suit. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Angela." She turned back to her desk, her eyes drawn to the photograph she kept partially hidden behind her laptop. The edges were worn soft from years of handling, the colors faded to nostalgic sepia tones. Two teenagers leaned against a pristine 67 Mustang Fastback, their whole lives ahead of them. The boy's dark hair fell across his forehead as he smiled at the camera, one arm draped casually over the girl's shoulders. The girl, herself, 20 years and a lifetime ago, beamed with unguarded joy, holding up a set of keys like a trophy. Catherine picked up the photo, her manicured fingernail tracing the outline of the car. It had taken her team of private investigators 3 years to track down that exact Mustang. 3 years of following dead ends and false leads, all while building an empire that would have seemed impossible to that teenage girl in the photo. "Miss Brooks!" Angela appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "Mr. Chen is getting impatient." "Richard Chen can learn the virtue of patience," Catherine replied, but she set the photo down. "Has there been any update on the restoration project?" Angela swiped through her tablet. The car was delivered to Sullivan's Classic Restorations this morning. The owner seems to have an excellent reputation for classic car restoration, despite some recent financial difficulties. Financial difficulties. Catherine's hand tightened on the back of her chair. She'd known about Mike's struggles, had monitored his situation from afar for months. It would be so easy to simply write a check to solve all his problems with the stroke of a pen. But that wasn't why she'd orchestrated this reunion. "What's our position on the merger?" she asked, deliberately changing the subject. "The board is split. Chen's faction is pushing for an immediate vote, but you still have majority support." Angela hesitated. "They're concerned about your recent distraction." Catherine allowed herself a small smile. 20 years of single-minded dedication to this company, and they think I'm distracted because I want to restore a car. A very specific car, Angela noted carefully. She'd been Catherine's assistant long enough to know the significance of that photograph, though they'd never discussed it directly. The board needs to understand something. Catherine gathered her tablet and phone. Every empire needs a foundation. Sometimes that foundation needs maintenance, just like any classic car. She paused at the door. Send me hourly updates on the restoration progress. And, Angela, make sure all communication goes through our intermediary. Mr. Sullivan isn't to know who the client is. Not yet. The boardroom fell silent as Catherine entered, 12 pairs of eyes tracking her movement to the head of the table. Richard Chen sat halfway down, his expression carefully neutral but his posture radiating challenge. She'd hired him 5 years ago, recognizing his brilliant mind for innovation. Now he was trying to leverage the board to force a merger that would effectively dilute her control of the company. "Lady and gentlemen," Catherine began, her voice carrying the authority that had become her trademark, "I understand there are concerns about the direction of Brooks Technologies. Let me be clear, this company has never been about taking the safe route. We built our success on knowing when to take risks and when to protect what matters most." As she launched into her presentation, part of her mind drifted to a small garage across town, where a piece of her past was waiting to be restored. She'd built this empire by herself, proving everyone who'd ever doubted her wrong. But sitting in her designer chair, surrounded by the trappings of success, Catherine Brooks felt the weight of every choice that had led her here, and every road not taken. The Mustang wasn't just a car. It was a chance to restore something. She'd lost long before she'd started gaining everything else. She just hoped she wasn't too late. The flatbed truck arrived precisely at 10 o'clock, its precious cargo covered in a custom car blanket that had seen better days. Mike was elbow-deep in a transmission repair when Emily burst into the workshop, her school backpack still slung over one shoulder. "Dad, it's here!" She bounced on her toes, practically vibrating with excitement. "Can I stay and watch?" "Please, Mrs. Johnson said I could skip math club just this once." Mike wiped his hands on a shop rag, trying to suppress his own eagerness. "Your education comes first, kiddo, you know that." "But this is educational. It's mechanical engineering in practice." She grinned, using his own words from countless workshop lessons against him. A sharp knock interrupted their debate. A woman in an impeccable business suit stood in the doorway, looking distinctly out of place among the tools and engine parts. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Diana Wells, representing the owner." She extended a hand, then thought better of it when she saw the grease still staining his fingers. "Just give me a moment to clean up," Mike said, heading for the industrial sink. Over his shoulder, he caught Emily introducing herself to Ms. Wells, with all the poise Sarah had tried so hard to instill in her. When he returned, Ms. Wells was reviewing documents on her tablet. "The owner has very specific requirements for this restoration," she began, her tone clipped and professional. "The car must be returned to its exact 1967 factory specifications, with one exception. The original registration and documentation must remain intact and untouched. Do you understand?" Mike nodded, though the request seemed odd. Usually, clients wanted to update at least some components to modern standards. "And the timeline?" 3 months, with weekly progress reports. She handed him a thick envelope. "This is your initial payment. The same amount will be delivered upon completion, assuming all requirements are met." Mike's eyes widened at the figure on the check. This was triple his usual rate, enough to clear the mortgage and still have operating capital left over. He looked up sharply, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "This is very generous. May I ask why my shop was chosen for this project?" Ms. Wells's expression remained carefully neutral. "The owner has heard excellent things about your work, Mr. Sullivan, particularly your attention to historical accuracy." She gestured to the truck driver, who had been waiting patiently. "Shall we?" The next few minutes were a carefully choreographed dance as the Mustang was slowly lowered from the flatbed. Even under the car cover, Mike could tell the lines were perfect. His fingers itched to see what lay beneath. "Ready?" Ms. Wells asked, reaching for the cover. Mike glanced at Emily, who had moved to stand beside him. Her eyes were wide with anticipation, reminding him of another young face that had looked at cars with that same wonder. He pushed the memory away. "Ready?" The cover came off in one smooth motion, and Mike's breath caught in his throat. The Mustang was in rough shape. Years of neglect, evident in the faded paint and surface rust, but it was unquestionably special. The night mist blue paint, though oxidized, was original. The fastback roofline swooped gracefully toward the rear, and despite the wear, there wasn't a single dent in the body panels. "It's beautiful," Emily whispered, reaching out to touch the hood before catching herself. Mike circled the car slowly, his experienced eye cataloging every detail that would need attention. The chrome needed refinishing, the upholstery was cracked and faded, and he could already tell the engine would need a complete rebuild. But there was something else, something familiar that nagged at the edges of his memory. He knelt to check. The registration number plate under the driver's door, and his hand froze mid-reach. There, barely visible through years of road grime, was a small heart carved into the doorframe. He blinked hard, but it didn't disappear. "Is everything all right, Mr. Sullivan?" Ms. Wells's voice snapped him back to the present. "Fine," he said quickly, straightening up, just assessing the scope of work. He forced himself to focus on the paperwork she was presenting, signing where indicated and trying to ignore the way his past seemed to be whispering from every curve of the car's bodywork. "I'll need your door code for the security system," he said, grateful for the routine questions that kept his mind occupied. "In case we need to work late." "That won't be necessary. The owner has arranged for private security to monitor the vehicle at night." Ms. Wells checked her watch. "They'll arrive at 6 to set up their equipment. Will that be a problem?" Mike thought of the foreclosure notice hidden in his desk drawer. He couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how strange the requirements. "No problem at all." After Ms. Wells left, Emily ran her fingers along the car's surface, this time without hesitation. "Can I help with the initial inspection, please?" Mike looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at the Mustang that had brought both a lifeline and an unsettling sense of déjà vu. "Grab your mother's toolbox," he said finally. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As Emily rushed to retrieve the toolbox, Mike found himself staring at that small carved heart again. It was exactly like the one he'd carved 20 years ago, in another Mustang, with another girl watching. But that was impossible. That car was long gone, along with the dreams it had carried. The afternoon light filtered through the workshop's high windows, casting long shadows across the Mustang's faded paint. Mike and Emily had spent the last hour documenting every scratch, every spot of rust, every part that would need replacement or repair. Emily sat cross-legged on a clean shop towel, carefully noting each item in her notebook with the methodical precision she'd inherited from her mother. "What's next on the inspection checklist?" Mike asked, testing her memory of their standard. "Procedure. Interior assessment," Emily replied without hesitation. "We document all original components and identify any non-standard modifications." She flipped to a fresh page in her notebook, adding the date at the top, just like Sarah had. "Always done." Mike unlocked the driver's door, wincing at the creaky protest of aged hinges. The interior smell hit him immediately. Old leather, dust, and something else. Something that made his chest tighten with recognition. He hesitated, one hand on the Dr. frame. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he said quickly, but his voice sounded strange, even to his own ears. "Just thinking about the work ahead." He slid into the driver's seat, his hands finding their place on the steering wheel with unsettling familiarity. The dashboard was a time capsule of the late 60s, simple analog gauges, minimal switches, and the original radio still intact. Mike reached for the glove compartment, his fingers trembling slightly as he pulled the latch. Inside, nestled among old registration papers and a faded owner's manual, was a cassette tape. "What's that?" Emily asked. peering over his shoulder. Mike held the tape like it might crumble to dust in his hands. The label was barely legible, but he didn't need to read it. He knew what it said. Summer '86 was written in flowing handwriting. He hadn't seen in 20 years. It's just an old mixtape, he managed, his throat suddenly dry. They were like playlists, but on magnetic tape. Emily reached for it, curious. Can we play it? Before Mike could answer, his eyes caught something else in the glove compartment, a folded piece of paper tucked behind the owner's manual. He pulled it out carefully, his heart pounding. But it was just a recent insurance document, the owner's name hidden behind thick black redaction marks. Dad, the tape? Mike snapped back to the present. Right, let's see if the radio still works. He pushed the tape into the slot before he could talk himself out of it, half expecting nothing to happen. But after a moment of mechanical whirring, music filled the car's interior, the Eagles' Take It Easy crackling through decades-old speakers. The song choice hit him like a physical blow. This was their song, his and Catherine's. They'd cruised down Main Street countless times with this exact song playing, young and invincible, and sure that nothing could ever come between them. This is actually pretty good, Emily said, bobbing her head to the music. Kind of like that. Stuff you play in the shop sometimes. Mike forced himself to focus on the inspection. The seats would need complete reupholstering. The leather was cracked and worn, with a familiar tear in the driver's side that he remembered making with his wallet chain. The carpet was original but badly faded. The headliner was starting to sag. He made careful notes, trying to ignore how each detail matched his memories exactly. It couldn't be the same car. Catherine had taken it with her when she left for college on the East Coast, chasing dreams bigger than their small town could. Old! He'd never seen it, or her, again. Hey, look at this! Emily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She was examining the underside of the dashboard, her small flashlight illuminating something carved into the plastic. There are initials here, CB and MS. Mike's hand slipped on the steering wheel. The clipboard clattered to the floor, inspection sheets scattering across the worn concrete. Dad, time for a break, he said abruptly, pushing out of the car. Why don't you go get us some sodas from the machine? Emily gave him a look that was pure Sarah, too knowing, too understanding. But she took the dollar bills he held out and headed for the break room, the Eagles still playing softly behind her. Alone with the car, Mike leaned against his workbench, trying to steady his breathing. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. The heart carved in the doorframe, the mixtape, the initials, even the tear in the seat. This wasn't just any '67 Mustang. This was their Mustang, which meant he straightened suddenly, crossing to his office. The morning's newspaper was still on his desk, folded to the business section he usually ignored. There, on the front page, was a photo he'd skimmed past earlier. Catherine Brooks, CEO of Brooks Technologies, announcing some major merger. She looked different now, sophisticated and polished. But her eyes were the same, eyes he'd once known better than his own. The article mentioned she'd recently returned to her hometown to oversee a new tech center development. Mike stared at the photo, pieces clicking into place. The generous payment, the strict restoration requirements, the security measures. She'd found their car, found him, but why now? And why this way? The Eagles faded into Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, another song from that summer that had changed everything. Mike closed his eyes, remembering the last time he'd heard it playing in this very car, the night Catherine told him she was leaving, chasing a future that didn't have room for small-town dreams or the boy who dreamed them. Emily's returned footsteps echoed in the workshop. Mike quickly folded the newspaper, tucking it into his back pocket. His daughter didn't need to see his past complications bleeding into their present. They had a job to do, the most important restoration of his career. Apparently, the rest would have to wait. Catherine stared at the spreadsheets on her tablet, but the numbers kept blurring together. The security feed from Sullivan's classic restorations played silently on her second monitor, showing Mike and a young girl, his daughter according to the file, working on the Mustang. She found herself watching their interactions more than the actual restoration progress. "Miss Brooks?" Angela appeared in the doorway. "The board members are requesting an emergency session. Mr. Chen is claiming you've misappropriated company funds for personal use." Catherine's jaw tightened. Of course Richard would find out about the Mustang. "The restoration is being funded from my personal accounts, not corporate resources. He knows that. He's suggesting it's a sign of emotional instability." Angela hesitated. "There are rumors you're planning to step down." The security feed showed Mike lifting his daughter up to peer into the engine bay, his hands steady and protective. Catherine forced her attention back to Angela. "Call legal. I want a complete audit of Chen's department ready for the morning meeting, and get me the latest polling from our shareholders." Her phone buzzed with Diana's daily report. Initial inspection complete. Subject discovered identifying markers. Emotional response noted. Catherine's hand moved instinctively to the small silver key she wore on a chain beneath her silk blouse. The original key to the Mustang, the one she'd been holding in that old photograph. She'd kept it all these years, even as she'd built her empire, earned her MBA, and transformed herself from a small-town dreamer into one of the most powerful women in tech. "There's something else," Angela said, interrupting her thoughts. "The Silicon Valley Times is running a piece on female CEOs and work-life balance. They're focusing on your personal history." "You mean my lack of one?" Catherine's laugh held no humor. "Send them the usual statement about dedication to innovation and corporate leadership. They've uncovered your high school records. They know about the scholarship you turned down to Stanford's mechanical engineering program." Catherine's fingers stilled on the key. She hadn't thought about that scholarship in years, or the alternative future it had represented. "What else do they know?" "Nothing specific about him." Angela nodded toward the security feed, where Mike was now teaching his daughter how to check the transmission fluid. "But they're asking questions about why you've returned to your hometown." The intercom buzzed before Catherine could respond. "Ms. Brooks, Mr. Chen and the board members are assembled in conference room A. Time to face the firing squad," Catherine murmured. She stood, straightening her jacket with practiced precision. "Angela, have Diana increase the security detail at the shop. I don't want any reporters getting wind of the restoration project." "Of course." "And the Times article." Catherine paused at the door, watching as Mike smiled at something his daughter had said. She recognized that smile. It was the same one that had once convinced her they could take on the world together, armed with nothing but a socket wrench set and endless summer dreams. "Tell them." She touched the key again, drawing strength from its familiar edges. "Tell them that even CEOs are allowed to restore what's broken." The boardroom fell silent as she entered, 12 faces ranging from concerned to openly hostile. Richard Chen sat in her usual chair at the head of the table, a power play so obvious it was almost amusing. "Lady and gentlemen," Catherine said, remaining standing, "I understand there are concerns about my recent investment choices." "Investment is a generous term," Chen interrupted. "Obsession might be more accurate. You've hired private investigators, spent countless resources tracking down a worthless old car. That worthless old car is my personal property, purchased with my personal funds." Catherine's voice could have frozen helium. "But since you're so interested in my investments, let's discuss your recent meeting with our competitors at Oracle Industries." Chen's face went pale. Catherine allowed herself a small smile as she opened her tablet. "Now, about that audit." The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, Chen's attempted coup lay in ruins, and Catherine had consolidated her control of the board even further. But the victory felt hollow as she returned to her office, where the security feed still played silently. Mike was alone now, carefully removing the Mustang's old spark plugs. Even through the grainy footage, she could see the gentleness in his hands, the same gentleness she'd once known so well. He paused suddenly, running his fingers over something on the engine block. Catherine leaned forward, knowing what he'd who found their initials scratched into the metal during one of their midnight repair sessions. Her phone buzzed again. Subject showing increasing signs of recognition. Recommend accelerating timeline. Catherine dismissed the message. She waited 20 years to restore what she'd broken. A few more weeks wouldn't hurt, would they? Emily Sullivan sat at her father's workbench, carefully sketching each part of the Mustang's carburetor as he disassembled it. Her notebook was already half full of detailed drawings, each component labeled with the precise terminology she'd been learning. A textbook on classic car restoration lay open beside her, borrowed from the shop's small library. "Remember," Mike said, holding up a small brass component, "what's the first rule of rebuilding a carburetor?" "Document everything," Emily replied, adding another detail to her drawing, "because you have to put it back exactly the way you found it." She glanced up at her father. "But Dad, I've been thinking, the factory specs show a different float needle valve than this one. Shouldn't we replace it with the original type?" Mike paused, studying his daughter with a mixture of pride and surprise. She'd been spending every afternoon in the shop since the Mustang arrived, absorbing information like a sponge. "That's actually a very good observation. How did you know to check the specs?" Emily held up her phone, showing a restoration forum she'd been following. This guy documented his whole '67 Fastback rebuild. He says the original Holly carbs had a specific valve design that most people miss. From her hidden vantage point behind a stack of old tires, Catherine pressed her hand to her mouth, suppressing a smile. She'd slipped into the shop during lunch, telling herself she needed to personally verify the restoration's progress. The security cameras didn't capture the small details, like the way Mike's eyes crinkled at the corners when he was impressed, exactly as they had when she'd made her first successful transmission diagnosis all those years ago. "Well, look who's turning into a real gearhead," Mike said, ruffling Emily's hair. "Your mom would be proud. She always said the devil was in the details." Emily's face lit up at the mention of her mother, but Catherine noticed a shadow pass over Mike's features. She knew from her research that Sarah Sullivan had died in a car accident 5 years ago, leaving Mike to raise their daughter alone. The knowledge had tied her stomach in knots for days after she'd learned it. "Can I try cleaning the jets?" Emily asked, already reaching for the ultrasonic cleaner. "I've been practicing with the small brushes on my model car parts." Mike hesitated, and Catherine found herself holding her breath. The jets were delicate, crucial components. One slip could... "Okay," Mike said finally. "But let me show you the proper technique first." He positioned Emily's hands carefully, demonstrating the gentle touch needed. "Like this, see? Just like painting your nails, but with more degreaser and less glitter." Emily giggled, but her face was set in concentration as she worked. Catherine watched them together, her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't quite name. She'd achieved everything she'd set out to do, built her company from nothing, revolutionized. The tech industry earned more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. But watching this father-daughter moment, she felt a peculiar sense of loss. "Dad," Emily's voice was hesitant, "can I ask you something?" "Always, kiddo. How come there's a heart carved in the doorframe with your initials?" Catherine's breath caught. Mike's hands stilled on the carburetor housing. "What makes you think they're my initials?" "MS," Emily said, still focused on cleaning the jet. "And they look old, like they were carved a long time ago. Plus, you got all weird when you first saw them." Mike was quiet for a long moment. "It was a different lifetime, Em, before I met your mom." "Was she nice? The girl whose initials are with yours?" Catherine leaned forward slightly, her heart pounding. "She was..." Mike picked up a shop rag, wiping his hands with careful precision. "She was brilliant, had big dreams, too big for this town as it turned out. Is that why she left?" "Emily," Mike's voice carried a warning note. "I'm just curious," Emily said quickly, "and you always say understanding the history of a car is part of restoring it properly." A small sound escaped Catherine's throat before she could stop it. Mike's head snapped up, scanning the shop. She ducked behind the tires, her pulse racing. "I think that's enough history for today," Mike said. "How about you go grab us some lunch? Those jets won't clean themselves." Catherine waited until Emily's footsteps had faded before risking another look. Mike stood at the workbench, staring at the disassembled carburetor, but clearly seeing something else entirely. His fingers traced the edge of an old photograph tucked inside his toolbox, a photo Catherine knew well because she had its twin in her office, 40 stories above them. "You okay, boss?" Tommy, Mike's lead mechanic, called from across the shop. Mike straightened, the professional mask sliding back into place. "Fine, just thinking about original specifications." He picked up Emily's notebook, studying her careful drawings. "Our girl's got a good eye for detail, just like her old man," Tommy said. "Though I gotta say, boss, this whole project is weird. Private security, mystery client, all these specific requirements about keeping original documents. You sure we haven't stumbled into some kind of car theft ring?" "The payment cleared," Mike said firmly. "That's all that matters." But Catherine saw the way his hand lingered on the carved initials as he passed the driver's door. He knew. Maybe not consciously, not yet, but some part of him remembered. Just as some part of her had never really left this shop, never stopped, being that girl who believed love and a good set of tools could fix anything. The evening sun cast long shadows through the workshop windows. As Mike worked alone, the quiet broken only by the soft classic rock playing from his old radio. He'd sent Emily home with Tommy's wife an hour ago, promising they'd continue the carburetor rebuild tomorrow. Now it was just him and the Mustang, and all the ghosts it seemed to carry. The dashboard was partially disassembled, components carefully laid out and labeled on his workbench. Emily's detailed drawings had proven surprisingly useful. Her fresh eyes had caught details he might have missed. But it was more than that. Working alongside her reminded him of other nights in this same shop, teaching another eager student. The secrets hidden in engine blocks and transmission housings. The thought of Catherine sent his hands stilling on the wiring harness he was examining. He'd been pushing away the similarities, trying to focus on the work, but they kept piling up. The carved initials, the mixtape, the specific wear patterns that matched his memories exactly. "You're losing it, Sullivan," he muttered, reaching deeper into the dashboard cavity. His fingers brushed something that didn't feel like standard wiring or components, a piece of paper wedged behind the radio housing. Carefully, he extracted it. The paper was yellowed with age, folded into a tight square. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, somehow knowing what he would find. Catherine's handwriting filled the page, as distinctive now as it had been 20 years ago. "Dear Mike, if you're reading this, it means one of two things. Either you're helping me restore our car, unlikely given my current trajectory, or you're stripping it for parts, more probable knowing my driving. Either way, you've found my time capsule. I'm writing this the night before I leave for Stanford. Mum says I'm making the right choice, that full scholarships to prestigious universities don't come along every day. Dad keeps talking about opportunities and futures and living up to my potential. But sitting here in our car, your car, really? Since you're the one who made it run, I can't help wondering if there's another kind of potential they're not seeing. The kind that lives in grease-stained hands and midnight repair sessions and dreams we built between spark plugs and transmission fluid. You told me once that anything can be fixed if you understand how it broke. I wish that applied to timing, as much as it does to timing belts. Maybe someday, when I've proven whatever it is I'm supposed to prove, I'll bring this car back to you. You always were the only one who could make it run right. Until then, keep the revs high and the oil clean. Love always, Cat. P.S. I left something else for you to find. Consider it a scavenger hunt for a future that might have been." Mike read the letter 3 times, each word hitting him like a physical blow. He remembered that night. The argument they'd had about her leaving, the things said and unsaid. He'd avoided the shop for weeks afterward, unable to face the empty space where their future was supposed to be. Moving on autopilot, he reached for his phone and searched Catherine Brooks Stanford. The results filled his screen. Tech innovator, youngest female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, revolutionary patents in artificial intelligence. The latest articles showed her speaking at conferences, accepting awards, standing in front of gleaming corporate headquarters. A photo caught his eye. Catherine at a classic car show, standing next to a red Ferrari. The caption read, "Tech. Titan Catherine Brooks indulges her passion for automotive restoration between multi-million-dollar deals." Between deals, Mike echoed softly. The timing of this restoration project, the generous payment, the strict requirements about originality. It wasn't just their old car. It was Catherine orchestrating a reunion in the only way she knew how. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Dad, I think I figured out the original paint code. Can we match it tomorrow?" Mike stared at the message, then at the letter in his hand. Emily's enthusiasm for this project, her natural talent with engines. It was like watching history repeat itself, but with a chance for a different ending. The security camera in the corner blinked its red light steadily. Mike looked directly into it, knowing somehow that Catherine would see this moment. Slowly, deliberately, he folded the letter and placed it in his wallet, next to the worn photo of Sarah he always carried. Two loves, two lives, and one car connecting past and present like a bridge made of steel and memories. "Okay, Cat," he whispered to the empty shop. "I'll play your scavenger hunt. Let's see what else you left for me to find." The bank representative's shoes clicked sharply against the concrete floor of Mike's workshop, the sound echoing off tool cabinets and half-finished projects. It was early, too early for Emily to be here, which was exactly why Mike had scheduled this meeting. "Mr. Sullivan," the woman said, consulting her tablet, "while we appreciate the recent large payment, it doesn't change the fundamental issues with your business model. This is the third time in 2 years you've fallen behind on your mortgage." Mike forced himself to remain professional, even as his fingers itched to get back to the Mustang waiting patiently in Bay 3. "The restoration business is cyclical. Miss Porter, you know that. One good project can turn everything around. Like this mysterious Mustang job?" She gestured toward the car. "The payment was substantial, I'll grant you that. But what happens when it's finished? Do you have other projects lined up?" The truth was he didn't. He'd been so focused on the Mustang, on doing everything exactly right, on following Catherine's breadcrumb trail of memories, that he'd let his usual client outreach slip. "I have prospects," he said, the lie tasting bitter, "and my daughter's been helping me modernize our booking system." Ms. Porter's expression softened slightly. "Your daughter, Emily, right? That's actually what concerns us most, Mr. Sullivan. A single parent running a struggling business. Have you considered selling? The property value alone would set you up somewhere more stable." Across town, Catherine faced her own financial inquisition, though the stakes were measured in billions rather than thousands. "The shareholders are nervous, Catherine," Marcus Webb, her longest-serving board member, said quietly. They stood in her private conference room, the wall of windows offering a perfect view of the street where she and Mike had once raced their freshly tuned Mustang. Chen's allegations about emotional instability are gaining traction. "Because I chose to restore a car." Catherine kept her voice level, though her hand tightened on her coffee cup. "I wasn't aware having a hobby was a sign of mental breakdown." "It's not just the car." Marcus slid a tablet across the table. "These photos were taken yesterday." Catherine's breath caught. The images showed her crouched behind the stack of tires in Mike's shop, watching him work with Emily. The next showed her leaving through the back door, checking carefully to ensure no one saw her. "The board would understand if you were simply reconnecting with an old flame," Marcus continued. "God knows most of them have young girlfriends or trophy wives, but sneaking around, hiding in garages, it doesn't project the image we need right now. not with the Oracle merger hanging in the balance. Back in the workshop, Mike watched Ms. Porter leave, her warnings about final notices and deadlines hanging in the air like exhaust fumes. He walked slowly to the Mustang, running his hand along its freshly sanded fender. "Your timing always was complicated," he murmured to the car, to Catherine, to the past. His phone buzzed. Emily, sending another picture of a classic Mustang she'd found online. "This one has the same trim package. Can we restore ours to look like this?" Ours. The word hit him hard. Emily had fallen in love with this car, just like he had all those years ago, just like Catherine had. And now the bank wanted him to consider selling the shop, abandoning not just his own dreams, but Sarah's legacy and Emily's future inheritance. In her office, Catherine stared at the damning photographs. "The merger isn't for another 3 months," she said finally, "after the restoration is complete." "Chen won't wait that long," Marcus sighed. "He's calling for an emergency shareholder meeting next week. If he succeeds in forcing the merger early, I'll lose controlling interest," Catherine finished. "Everything I've built will be absorbed into Oracle's empire." She turned to the window, looking down at the street where she'd once been young and fearless. "How much time do I have?" "The vote is scheduled for next Friday. 8 days. In the workshop, Mike's phone rang. He recognized the number, another client, probably calling about their delayed project. "Sullivan's Classic Restorations," he answered, trying to sound confident. "Mike, it's John Webster. Look, I hate to do this, but I'm going to need to take my Chevelle to another shop. I can't keep waiting while you focus on this mystery Mustang project." "John, wait!" But the line was already dead. Mike looked at the Mustang, its half-restored body gleaming under the workshop lights. They were only halfway through the project, with weeks of work still ahead. The payment from Catherine, and he was sure now it was from her, had bought him some time, but not enough. Not with other clients leaving and the bank breathing down his neck. He pulled out Catherine's letter, rereading her words about timing and potential and futures not taken. Somewhere in this car, she'd left more clues, more pieces of their shared past. But with the bank's deadline looming and clients dropping away, he might not have time to find them all. Unless he walked to his office, picking up the business magazine with Catherine's photo. The article mentioned she was staying at the Grand Hotel downtown while overseeing Brooks Technologies' expansion into their hometown. Maybe it was time to stop playing scavenger hunt. Maybe it was time to confront the past head-on before he lost everything. His shop, his daughter's inheritance, and his chance to understand why Catherine had brought their car home after all these years. The yearbook was heavier than Mike remembered. Its blue cover faded from years of storage in his office's bottom drawer. He hadn't opened it since Sarah died, but Emily's questions about the Mustang and Catherine's letter had sent him digging through old memories. "Earth to Dad," Emily said, perched on the corner of his desk. "You've been staring at that book for like 5 minutes. Mike blinked, realizing he'd lost track of time. "Just doing some research on period-correct restoration techniques." He lied, but Emily was already reaching for the yearbook. "Class of '87? She flipped it open before he could stop her. "Oh my gosh, is that you? Look at your hair!" The photo she'd found was from the auto shop class. Mike, in a grease-stained shirt, bent over an engine with another student. Catherine. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was pointing at something in the engine bay, her face animated with explanation. "Who's that with you?" Emily asked, but her tone suggested she already knew. Mike cleared his throat. "That's Catherine. We were the girl whose initials are carved in the Mustang," Emily finished. She studied the photo more closely. "She's pretty, and she looks like she knows her way around an engine." "She was the best mechanic in school," Mike said softly. "Could diagnose an engine problem just by listening to it. Everyone thought she was just hanging around the shop because of me, but truth was, I learned as much from her as she did from me." Emily turned the page, finding more photos. The senior prom, Catherine in a blue dress that matched the Mustang's paint, Mike in a rented tux with a crooked bow tie. The senior superlatives, most likely to succeed under Catherine's portrait, and there in the candid section, a shot of them both leaning against the Mustang in the school parking lot, laughing at something now lost to time. "Dad?" Emily's voice was careful. "Is this the same Mustang we're restoring?" Before Mike could answer, Tommy stuck his head in the office. "Boss, you might want to see this." Mike followed his mechanic out to the shop floor, Emily trailing behind with the yearbook. A sleek town car had pulled up outside, its driver helping an elderly man out of the back seat. "Is that?" Tommy whispered. "Robert Brooks," Mike confirmed, recognizing Catherine's father from recent newspaper photos. The man who had once told his daughter she was wasting her potential hanging around a small town garage. Mr. Brooks walked slowly into the shop, leaning on an expensive-looking cane. His suit probably cost more than Mike's monthly mortgage payment, but his face carried the same stern expression Mike remembered from 20 years ago. "Michael Sullivan," he said, his voice gravelly with age. "You've done well with the place. Your father would be proud." Mike felt Emily press against his side, suddenly shy. "Mr. Brooks, what can I do for you? You can explain why my daughter is risking everything she's built to play mechanic again." He gestured toward the Mustang with his cane. "She won't listen to me, but maybe she'll listen to you. Tell her to sell the car. And this, whatever this is, before she loses control of her company." Mike's hand found Emily's shoulder, drawing strength from her presence. "With all due respect, sir, that's not my place. Catherine's a grown woman who can make her own decisions. Just like she decided to throw away a full scholarship to Stanford's engineering program?" Mr. Brooks's eyes narrowed. "Oh, yes, I remember how that almost played out. You and this car and all your grand plans about opening a garage together. Thank God she came to her senses." Emily's grip on the yearbook tightened. Mike could feel her tension, her instinct to defend him warring with her shyness. "Actually," Mike said quietly, "she didn't throw anything away. She went to Stanford, built an empire, and changed the tech industry. And now she owns this car again. Seems to me like she found a way to have everything she wanted." "Not everything," Mr. Brooks said, his gaze shifting to Emily. "Some choices have permanent consequences. Remember that, young lady." He turned to leave, then paused. "The shareholder vote is next Friday. If she loses control of the company because she was distracted by old memories, I trust you'll know whose fault it really is." After he left, Emily opened the yearbook again, finding the photo of her father and Catherine working on the engine together. "Dad, what did you mean about her having everything she wanted?" Mike stared at the empty space where Mr. Brooks had stood, 20 years of unspoken words pressing against his chest. "I meant that sometimes people can surprise you. Your mom taught me that. She never cared that I was just a mechanic, never worried about status or money. She loved this shop almost as much as I do." "But Catherine left," Emily said, tracing the outline of the Mustang in the old photo. "She had dreams bigger than this town could hold, bigger than I could understand back then." Mike looked at the Mustang, remembering Catherine's letter about different kinds of potential. "But she kept the car. All these years, she kept our car. And now, she's brought it home." Emily was quiet for a moment, processing this with the serious consideration she gave to complex engine problems. "The bank lady said we might have to sell the shop," she finally said. "Is that true?" Mike knelt down to her level, the way he did when explaining particularly tricky mechanical concepts. "Emily, I promise you, I'm not going to let that happen. This shop was your mom's dream too. It's your inheritance. Then maybe—" Emily held up the yearbook, showing the photo of young Catherine explaining the engine to young Mike. "Maybe it's time to talk to her. For real, not just through the car." Mike looked at his daughter, so much like Sarah in her practical wisdom, but with a spark of something else, something that reminded him of another young woman who'd once believed anything could be fixed if you understood how it broke. "Yeah," he said softly, "maybe it is." Catherine sat in her parked car outside Sullivan's Classic Restorations, gripping the steering wheel of her Mercedes as if it might somehow give her courage. The morning sun hadn't yet crested the building's roof, but she could see lights on. Inside, Mike always was an early riser. After her father's intervention yesterday, she knew she couldn't keep hiding behind Diana's reports and security cameras. The workshop door was unlocked, the familiar smell of oil and metal hitting her with an almost physical force. For a moment, she was 17 again, sneaking in early to surprise Mike with fresh donuts and mechanical questions. But the girl, sitting at the workbench, wasn't her younger self. Emily Sullivan looked up from her notebook, her eyes widening in recognition. "You're Catherine Brooks," she said, straightforward and direct, just like her father. "I saw your picture in Dad's yearbook." Catherine's carefully prepared speech evaporated. "Is your father here?" "Emergency fuel pump replacement across town. Mr. Peterson's car died in his driveway." Emily closed her notebook. Catherine caught a glimpse of detailed mechanical drawings before it shut. "He'll be back soon. You can wait if you want." The professional thing would be to leave, to maintain the careful distance she'd orchestrated. Instead, Catherine found herself drawn to the workbench, to the familiar tools and the unfamiliar young girl who wielded them with such confidence. "What are you working on?" she asked, nodding toward the notebook. "Documenting the Mustang's restoration." Emily opened the notebook again, revealing pages of meticulous diagrams. "Dad says proper documentation is crucial for historical accuracy. But I think—" She hesitated, studying Catherine's face. "I think maybe he's being extra careful because it's your car." Catherine picked up the notebook, her throat tight. The drawings could have come from her own high school notes. The same attention to detail, the same love of precision. "These are excellent," she said softly. "You have a real talent for this." "Mum was good at it too," Emily said, watching Catherine's reaction carefully. "Dad says she could fix anything." The mention of Sarah felt like a splash of cold water. Catherine set the notebook down. "Your father's right. I remember when she first started working here, just after—" She stopped, realizing she was wandering into dangerous territory. "After you left," Emily finished. She picked up a wrench, turning it over in her hands. "Dad found your letter behind the radio." Catherine's heart stuttered. "He did?" "He read it a lot. When he thinks I'm not looking." Emily's eyes, so much like her father's, met Catherine's directly. "Are you going to take the car away when it's finished?" Catherine hadn't actually thought that far ahead. The restoration had been about the journey, about finding a way back to what she'd lost, or thought she'd lost. "Would you miss it?" "Yes." Emily ran her hand along the Mustang's newly sanded fender. "But that's not why I'm asking. Dad would miss it more. He talks to it sometimes when he thinks no one can hear, about timing and choices and different kinds of potential." Catherine's phone buzzed. Angela, probably with more news about Chen's takeover attempt. She ignored it. "Emily, about your father." A truck's engine rumbled outside. Mike's tow truck. Catherine would know that sound anywhere. Emily's eyes widened. "The back door," she said quickly. "If you're not ready to talk to him yet." Catherine hesitated, torn between fight and flight. The choice was made for her as footsteps approached the workshop door. She squeezed Emily's shoulder as she passed, a gesture of thanks, of recognition, of something she couldn't quite name, and slipped out the back just as Mike's voice filled the workshop. You'll never guess who I ran into at Peterson's." Catherine closed the door softly behind her, but not before she heard Emily's response. "Actually, Dad, you'll never guess who was just here." In her car, Catherine's phone buzzed again. "This time," she answered. "Angela, tell the board I'm calling an emergency session. It's time to stop running from the past. All of it." She looked back at the workshop, where Mike was undoubtedly getting quite an earful from his perceptive daughter. Emily's notebook, full of careful drawings, flashed through her mind, along with the girl's quiet observations about her father's habits. Some things, it seemed, ran deeper than engine oil and genetics. Some things were passed down like cherished tools, from parent to child to memory and back again. Catherine started her car, but instead of heading to the office, she pointed it toward the Grand Hotel. She had preparations to make. Because Emily was right, she couldn't keep hiding behind security cameras and mysterious client requirements. It was time to face both the future and the past, head-on. The final notice from First National Bank lay unopened on Mike's desk, its presence as heavy as an engine block. Through his office window, he could see Emily working on the Mustang, painstakingly polishing the newly restored chrome trim. She'd been quiet since Catherine's visit yesterday, watching him with knowing eyes that reminded him too much of Sarah. His phone rang. Another client cancellation, most likely. But the caller ID showed Tommy's wife instead. "Mike, you need to turn on the news, Channel 7. He flicked on the small TV mounted in the corner, a relic from Sarah's days of watching soap operas during lunch breaks. The business segment was running a breaking story. Brooks Technologies faces hostile takeover. CEO Catherine Brooks under fire. The reporter's voice filled the small office. Sources say the emergency shareholder meeting has been moved up to tomorrow morning, with board member Richard Chen expected to force a vote on the Oracle Industries merger. Critics point to Brooks's recent erratic behavior, including an obsession with a vintage car restoration project in her hometown. Mike's hands clenched. Erratic behavior, obsession, the words of people who'd never understood what it meant to love something you built with your own hands. "Dad?" Emily stood in the doorway, chrome polish still on her fingers. "Is Catherine going to lose her company?" Before he could answer, the bank's number flashed on his phone. He let it go to voicemail, but the message light blinked accusingly. They both knew what it meant. The grace period was over. Pay up or lose the shop. "What are we going to do?" Emily asked, her voice small. Mike looked at his daughter, then at the TV where Catherine's corporate headshot filled the screen, then at the Mustang through the window. 20 years of choices and consequences, all converging at once. Across town, Catherine stood in her hotel suite, surrounded by financial reports and legal documents. Angela hovered nearby, updating her on the latest defections from her board support. "Chen's gathered enough votes," Angela reported grimly. "Unless you can convince the major shareholders to back you by tomorrow morning, I'll lose everything I've built." Catherine walked to the window. From here, she could just make out the roof of Sullivan's classic restorations in the distance. How much time until the meeting? 14 hours. "Catherine," Angela hesitated. "Maybe your father was right. If you sold the Mustang, focused solely on the company." "That's exactly what Chen wants," Catherine said sharply, "to prove I'm not emotionally equipped to lead. That I'll sacrifice passion for pragmatism, just like I did 20 years ago." She turned from the window. "Get me everything we have on Chen's dealings with Oracle, and call Diana. I need to know exactly how much of the Mustang's restoration is complete." "You're not thinking of going to the garage?" "That's exactly what I'm thinking." Catherine grabbed her jacket. "It's time to stop letting other people define what success looks like." But when she reached the workshop, she found only Emily, sitting alone beside the Mustang, with tears tracking down her cheeks. "Where's your father?" Catherine asked, her heart racing. "Bank meeting," Emily said, wiping her face quickly. "They're going to take the shop. Dad tried to hide it, but I heard him on the phone. We have until Friday to pay the full mortgage balance." The same day as the shareholder vote. Catherine's chest tightened as she looked around the workshop, at the lifetime of tools and memories, at the half-restored Mustang that had brought her back here, at this young girl who carried echoes of her own past. "Emily," she said carefully, "how would you feel about a trade?" Emily looked up, suspicious but interested. "What kind of trade?" "I have a meeting tomorrow morning. A very important meeting, and I think..." Catherine ran her hand along the Mustang's fender, feeling the smooth perfection of Mike's work. "I think maybe I need to show some people what really matters." "The car?" Emily's eyes widened. "But it's not finished." "No," Catherine smiled. "It's not. But sometimes the most important part of restoration isn't the final product. It's the process itself, the choosing to fix what's broken, no matter what anyone else thinks." She pulled out her phone, then hesitated. "Is your father's office still upstairs, With the view of the loading dock? Emily nodded. Good, because I think it's time for both Mike Sullivan and Catherine Brooks to stop running from what they really want. But I'm going to need your help. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the town, promising summer rain and change. Inside, 2 generations of dreamers began to plot, while a half-restored Mustang waited patiently for its moment to bridge past and present once again. The bank meeting had gone exactly as badly as Mike expected. Standing in the rain outside the Granite building, he read through the final ultimatum again. Full payment by Friday, or foreclosure proceedings would begin Monday morning. 20 years of work, Sarah's legacy, Emily's future, all of it reduced to numbers on a piece of paper that was slowly dissolving in the downpour. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Dad, come back to the shop. There's something you need to see. The drive back felt longer than usual, each familiar landmark a reminder of what he stood to lose. The workshop lights were on despite the gathering storm, and as he pulled into the lot, he noticed something odd. The security team that usually watched the Mustang was gone. Inside, Emily sat at his desk, her expression unreadable. Did you know? She asked without preamble, turning his computer monitor toward him. About Catherine? The screen showed a business news website, and there was Catherine, not in an old yearbook photo, but in a corporate portrait from last week. The headline made his heart stop. Brooks Technologies, CEO faces criticism over classic car restoration. Project in hometown. Below the headline was a photo that made his hands grip the desk for support. Catherine, much younger, standing beside a night-mist blue 1967 Mustang Fastback. The caption read, Brooks's first car, purchased and restored in high school, recently relocated to Sullivan's Classic Restorations for comprehensive restoration. Emily, Mike said carefully, what do you know about this? She was here this morning, Emily said, after you left for the bank. She told me everything about the car, about the company, about why she came back. She pulled something from her notebook, a business card with an elegant CB monogram. She said to give you this when you figured it out. Mike took the card, turning it over in his hands. On the back, in familiar handwriting, some things are worth more than timing belts and stock options. Meet me where it all started. She's going to lose her company, Emily said quietly. Tomorrow morning, at the shareholder meeting, just like we're going to lose the shop on Friday. She looked up at her father, her eyes bright with something that looked like hope. Unless what? Unless you both stop being so stubborn about fixing things alone. Emily stood up, suddenly. Every inch her mother's daughter. Mum always said the hardest part of restoration is knowing when to ask for help. And Dad, I think maybe this isn't just about the car anymore. Mike looked out at the Mustang, remembering Catherine's letter about different kinds of potential, about futures that might have been, about understanding how things broke. The rain drummed on the roof, a soundtrack to memory. Catherine teaching him about compression ratios, while her father demanded she focus on college applications. The night she left, both of them too proud to admit they were choosing the wrong paths. Sarah, years later, telling him it was okay to keep the old yearbook, to remember that first love shaped us, even if it didn't last. And now here they were, 20 years later, both about to lose everything they'd built. Unless, Dad, Emily pressed the business card into his hand again. Go find her. I'll watch the shop. Mike looked at his daughter, so much like Sarah in her practical wisdom, but with a spark of something else. Something that reminded him of another young woman who'd once believed anything could be fixed if you understood how it broke. Where? It all started, he murmured, reading Catherine's note again. He knew exactly where she'd be. The old drive-in theater had closed years ago, but its broken neon sign still cast occasional sparks against the stormy sky. They'd spent countless nights here in the Mustang, planning futures and sharing dreams, back when anything seemed possible, with enough determination and the right tools. Mike grabbed his jacket, then paused. From his desk drawer, he pulled out The old photograph of him and Catherine with the Mustang, and next to it, a picture of him and Sarah on their wedding day. Two loves, two lives. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe it was time to stop trying to fix everything alone. "Use the shop phone if you need me," he told Emily. "I have a feeling this might take a while." As he headed for the door, Emily's voice stopped. "Him, Dad? Sometimes the best restorations aren't about making things exactly like they were. Sometimes they're about making something new from all the old parts." Mike looked at his daughter, wondering when she'd gotten so wise. "When did you figure it all out?" Emily smiled, a knowing look that blended Sarah's practicality with Catherine's determination. "Pretty much when I saw her talking to the Mustang this morning. Just like you do. Some things, Dad, are just meant to be restored." The rain had softened to a gentle mist by the time Mike pulled into the drive-in's crumbling parking lot. Catherine's Mercedes sat alone in their old spot, Space C-17, where they'd watched countless movies and dreamed up countless futures. She stood leaning against the hood, her designer suit incongruous against the abandoned screen tower, but her posture was pure teenage Catherine, all quiet confidence and hidden vulnerability. "You know," Mike said, stepping out of his truck, "normal people just make a phone call when they want to reconnect." "When have I ever been normal?" Catherine's smile was tentative but real. "Besides, you're the one who taught me the importance of proper restoration procedure. Step 1. Understand how it broke." They finished together. The moment hung between them, heavy with 20 years of unspoken words. Catherine broke first, pushing away from her car. "I saw the foreclosure notice, Mike. Through the security cameras I wasn't supposed to tell you about. And I saw the news about your company. Tomorrow's vote. Quite a pair we make," Catherine said softly. "Both about to lose everything we built." Mike studied her face. Older, yes, but still with that same determined set to her jaw that had first caught his. "Attention in auto shop class." "Why now, Cat? Why bring the Mustang back after all these years?" She pulled something from her jacket pocket, the original key on its silver chain. "Because some things can't be fixed alone. I learned that building my company. Took me 20 years to admit it might apply to other things too." She gestured to the empty theater around them. "Remember what you said to me here, the night before I left for Stanford? I said a lot of things that night, most of them pretty stupid. You said I was choosing the safe route, that I was more worried about living up to expectations than following my heart." Her fingers traced the key's worn edges. "You were right and you were wrong, because I did follow my heart, just not the way either of us expected." Mike thought of Emily's words about making something new from old parts. "You built an empire." "I built a cage," Catherine corrected. "One made of stock options and shareholder expectations instead of small-town limitations. And now Chen's going to take it all anyway, because I finally decided to do something for myself instead of for the quarterly reports." Thunder rumbled in the distance as Mike closed the space between them. "The Mustang wasn't just about the car, was it?" Catherine met his eyes. "Was it ever?" "Cat!" "I'm not trying to disrupt your life, Mike. I know about Sarah, about the wonderful family you built. Emily, she's extraordinary. So much like you, but with something else, something special. She reminds me of you sometimes," Mike admitted. "The way she sees right to the heart of things, the way she believes anything can be fixed if you understand it well enough." Catherine's laugh was shaky. "God, we were so young when we believed that. Maybe we were right." Mike pulled out her business card, turning it over to show her note. "Maybe we just needed more time to understand how things really broke and how to fix them. I can't fix this, Mike. By this time tomorrow, I'll lose my company. Everything I worked for, gone, because I couldn't stop thinking about what I left behind." Mike reached into his pocket, withdrew the bank's final notice. "Funny thing about leaving things behind. Sometimes you find them again, right when you need them most." Catherine took the paper, her eyes widening as she read. Then slowly, a smile spread across her face. The same smile that had once convinced him they could rebuild an engine with nothing but determination and borrowed tools. "Mike Sullivan, Are you thinking what I'm thinking? That maybe it's time we finished what we started. Both the restoration and everything else? She held up the key. I still remember how to tune a carburetor, and I still remember how to read a business prospectus. Sarah made sure of that when we were expanding the shop. The rain picked up again, but neither of them moved. In the glow of the old neon sign, Catherine looked both familiar and new, like a carefully restored classic with modern upgrades. It won't be easy, she warned. Chen's got a lot of support on the board. And the bank's not going to wait forever, Mike countered. But you know what? I've got a pretty smart daughter who keeps telling me the best restorations aren't about making things exactly like they were. Catherine's hand found his, the key pressed between their palms like a promise. Then maybe it's time we both stopped trying to restore the past and started building something new instead. Above them, the storm began to clear, stars peeking through breaks in the clouds. Just like another night, 20 years ago, when two kids in a Mustang thought they had to choose between love and dreams. Maybe, Mike thought, they'd finally figured out how to have both. Dawn was breaking over the workshop when Emily arrived to find both her father's truck and a sleek Mercedes in the parking lot. Inside, Mike and Catherine sat at his desk, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups, while Catherine's tablet displayed a video feed of an anxious-looking Angela. "The shareholders meet in 4 hours, Angela was saying. "Chen's people are already gathering supporters in the lobby." "Let them," Catherine replied, her eyes fixed on the document Mike was reviewing. "How many shares does Sullivan's Classic Restorations need to buy to block the merger?" Emily froze in the doorway. Her father looked up, his tired eyes crinkling at the corners. "Morning, kiddo. Hope you don't mind, but we're thinking of taking on a new partner." "The shop can't afford," Emily began, but Catherine cut her off. "The shop can't, but I can. At least for the next few hours while I still control my company." She ran a hand through her disheveled hair, somehow still managing to look elegant despite pulling an all-nighter. "The question is whether your father will let me." Mike set down the papers. "Stock certificates," Emily realized. "It's not that simple, Kat. If we do this, use the shop to buy enough shares to block Chen's vote, we're betting everything on one move. If it fails, then we both lose everything," Catherine finished. "But if it works, we save both," Emily said, understanding lighting up her face. "The shop becomes a major shareholder in Brooks Technologies, which gives you enough votes to stop the merger, and the shop gets the investment it needs to stay open." Both adults turned to stare at her. "When did you learn about corporate voting structures?" Mike asked. Emily shrugged. "I might have done some research last night." After Catherine left her business card, the tablet chimed with an incoming call. Catherine's father's name flashed on the screen. She declined it with a sharp gesture. "He's not going to stop," Mike said quietly. "Neither is Chen. They're going to say you're emotionally compromised, making irrational decisions based on sentiment. Let them." Catherine stood, pacing the small office. "I built that company by seeing potential where others saw junk, just like we used to do with cars." She paused at the window, looking down at the Mustang. "The real question is, are you ready for this? Because if we do this, everything changes. The shop, your life, Emily's future." "My future?" Emily moved fully into the office. "What about my future?" The adults exchanged a look that held volumes of unspoken communication. "Finally," Mike said, "if this works, the shop would become part of Brooks Technologies' portfolio. We'd expand, modernize. It wouldn't be just a small-town restoration garage anymore, but it would still be ours." Emily's voice was small. "Yes," Catherine said firmly, "that's non-negotiable. Your father would retain operational control, and you—" She smiled. "Well, let's just say I've seen your notebook. I could use someone with your eye for detail in our engineering department eventually." Another call came through. Chen, this time. Catherine answered it on speaker. "Catherine, be reasonable." His smooth voice filled the office. "I have the proxy votes. The merger is happening. Don't throw away your legacy on some nostalgic midlife crisis." Emily watched her father's jaw tighten at Chen's tone. But before he could speak, Catherine replied, My legacy, Richard, is understanding that true value isn't always visible on a balance sheet. I'll see you at the vote." She hung up, but the tension remained. Mike stood, moving to stand beside her at the window. "Kat, are you sure? Your father was right about one thing. You worked too hard building that company to risk it all now." "No," Catherine said softly. "I worked too hard to let someone else decide what it becomes." She turned to face him. "But I can't do this without you. Both of you." Emily looked between them. Her father, who had taught her that anything worth doing was worth doing right, and Catherine, who had brought back not just a car, but a chance at something new, something bigger than all of them. "Dad," she said, "remember what Mom used to say about taking chances?" Mike's expression softened. "That the best mechanics know when to replace a part and when to rebuild it." "Exactly." Emily picked up her notebook, opening it to her latest drawings of the Mustang's engine. "So maybe it's time to stop trying to restore things exactly the way they were and start building something better." Catherine's phone buzzed again. Angela with updates about shareholders arriving early. The time for decision had come. Outside, the morning sun caught the Mustang's newly polished chrome, making it shine like a beacon of possibility. 3 generations of dreams, about to either crash together or soar in ways none of them had imagined. The choice, as always, would come down to understanding not just how things broke, but how they could be made stronger in the rebuilding. The Brooks Technologies lobby buzzed with shareholders and press, all eyes drawn to the unusual sight of a pristine 1967 Mustang Fastback parked directly in front of the building's glass entrance. Its night-mist blue paint gleamed in the morning. The sun, the product of an all-night restoration session that had left Mike's hands raw and Catherine's designer suit stained with polish. "Are you sure about this?" Mike asked, watching Catherine adjust her presentation notes. They stood in her private elevator, Emily between them clutching a leather portfolio that contained their entire future. "About saving my company with a classic car demonstration?" Catherine's smile held equal parts nervousness and determination. "Let's just say I'm taking a page from your repair manual. Sometimes you have to strip everything down to see what's really valuable." The elevator doors opened directly into the boardroom. Chen stood at the head of the table, Catherine's usual spot, flanked by Oracle Industries executives. His confident smile faltered slightly at the sight of Mike and Emily. "Catherine," he said smoothly, "this is a closed meeting. Family photos can wait until after the vote." "They're not here for photos." Catherine strode to the center of the room. "They're here because Sullivan's Classic Restorations now owns 12% of Brooks Technologies' voting shares." A murmur ran through the assembled shareholders. Chen's smile disappeared entirely. "Impossible. The purchase would have been flagged, not if it was done through multiple small transfers over 6 hours." Emily piped up, then blushed as all eyes turned to her. Hypothetically speaking." Catherine's father rose from his seat. "Catherine, what have you done?" "What you taught me to do, Dad. Found value where others saw liability." She nodded to Emily, who opened the portfolio and began distributing documents. "Ladies and gentlemen, before you vote on the Oracle merger, I want to show you something. Not quarterly projections or market analyses, but the future of Brooks Technologies." She clicked her presentation remote. The wall screen filled with an image of the Mustang, taken just an hour ago. "This car represents everything our company stands for. Innovation, precision, the ability to recognize potential where others see outdated technology." "A car," Chen scoffed. "This is what you're betting the company's future on." "No," Mike stepped forward. "She's betting it on the process. The understanding that true restoration isn't about returning something to what it was. It's about making it better than it ever could have been before." Emily pulled up the next slide, her detailed drawings of the Mustang's enhanced systems. "Brooks Technologies' AI could revolutionize classic car restoration," she explained, her voice growing stronger as she warmed to the subject. Imagine software that could analyze engine sounds for precise diagnostics or predict metal fatigue before it becomes critical. "The girl's done her homework," one of the older board members muttered appreciatively. Catherine moved through the presentation with practiced ease, but Mike noticed she kept one hand on the Mustang's key around her neck. Sullivan's Classic Restorations isn't just a small-town garage. It's a testing ground for integrating our AI technology with hands-on mechanical expertise, the kind of expertise that built this company in the first place. She met her father's eyes. "You always said I was wasting my potential in that garage. But what if the garage was exactly where I needed to be? What if understanding how things break and how to fix them is the most valuable skill a CEO can have?" The room was silent as Catherine's words sank in. Chen started to speak, but Emily beat him to it, pulling out her notebook. "Look at these diagnostic patterns," she said, spreading the pages across the table. "I've been documenting every step of the Mustang's restoration. With Brooks Technologies AI, we could create a database of mechanical knowledge that combines human experience with machine learning." The board members clustered around Emily's drawings, murmuring with growing interest. Mike watched his daughter explain complex mechanical concepts to some of the wealthiest people in the country and felt a fierce pride that had nothing to do with engines or algorithms. "The vote," Chen demanded, his face flushed. "We need to proceed with the vote." Catherine squared her shoulders. "Yes, let's, because everyone in this room needs to decide what kind of company we want to be. One that gets absorbed into a corporate machine, or one that remembers its roots while reaching for the future." The old board member who had noticed Emily's homework stood up. "I've seen enough. I'm voting my shares against the merger." One by one, other shareholders began to voice their agreement. Chen's face grew darker with each declaration. Catherine's father was the last to speak. He walked slowly to the Mustang, running his hand along its fender. "I bought you your first set of tools," he said quietly, "before I got scared about your future and tried to force you onto a safer path. Dad, you were right, both of you." He turned to face the room. "My shares vote against the merger. Some things are worth more than safe investments." As the final votes were tallied, Mike felt Emily slip her hand into his. "Dad, does this mean we get to keep the shop?" "The shop," Catherine answered, "and something more. A future none of us could have built alone." Outside the boardroom windows, the morning sun caught the Mustang's chrome trim, sending bright reflections dancing across the walls like promises kept, and new ones waiting to be made. The sun was setting behind Sullivan's Classic Restorations, casting long shadows across the newly installed Brooks Technologies sign that now shared space with the original workshop nameplate. Inside, Mike watched Emily demonstrate her diagnostic software prototype to Catherine's development team, her tablet connected to the Mustang's enhanced monitoring system. "See?" Emily pointed to a pattern on the screen. "The AI can predict potential issues by comparing current engine sounds with its database of known problems, but it still needs a human mechanic to verify and fix the actual issue. The perfect blend of technology and experience," Catherine said from the office doorway. She'd switched her corporate suit for well-worn jeans and a shop shirt, looking more relaxed than Mike had seen her in weeks. "Just like some other combinations I could mention." Mike felt the familiar warmth in his chest that appeared whenever. He saw Catherine in his shop. Their shop now, technically, though she'd insisted on keeping the Sullivan name primary on all the paperwork. "How'd the board meeting go?" he asked as she crossed to his desk. "Chen's resignation is official, and Dad's actually excited about our new direction. He's been going through his old engineering textbooks, talking about consulting on the AI architecture," she smiled. "Apparently he's remembered he used to love building things too." Through the window, they could see the development team gathering around the Mustang, taking notes as Emily popped the hood. The late sunlight caught the new Brooks Sullivan Innovation Center plaque on the wall, Emily's suggestion for the expanded workshop's official name. Sarah would have loved this, Mike said softly. Seeing Emily in her element, the shop growing into something bigger than we imagined. Catherine's hand found his on the desk. She helped make it possible. Everything you learned together, everything you built, it's all part of this too. Mike turned to look at her fully. No regrets? About any of it? About taking 20 years to figure out we could have both? Maybe a few? She squeezed his hand. But Emily's right. Sometimes the best restorations aren't about going backwards. They're about taking everything you've learned and building something better. A knock at the door interrupted them. Emily stood there, practically bouncing with excitement. Dad! Catherine! Come look at what we figured out! They followed her to the Mustang, where the development team had set up multiple screens displaying real-time diagnostic data. Emily's notebook lay open on the workbench, its hand-drawn diagrams now supplemented with complex coding notes. We can integrate Mom's old diagnostic methods with the AI, Emily explained. See? Her way of listening to engines, combined with the computer's pattern recognition, it's like having the best of both worlds. Mike watched his daughter move confidently between the traditional tools and cutting-edge technology, equally at home with both. She reminded him so much of Sarah in her practical approach, but there was something else there too, a spark of innovation that echoed Catherine's vision. The development team began packing up for the day, leaving the three of them alone with the Mustang. Catherine ran her hand along the car's flank, pausing at the spot where their initials were still carved. You know, she said thoughtfully, we never did finish the full restoration. Maybe we're not supposed to, Emily suggested. Maybe it's better with some of its history showing, like a timeline of everything that brought us here. Mike looked at his daughter, so wise, so understanding of things that had taken him decades to learn. Then at Catherine, who had found her way back to this shop with a plan both wildly improbable and perfectly logical. Speaking of timelines, Catherine said, the house next door just went up for sale. The commute from the Grand Hotel is getting old. Mike's heart did a familiar flip. Trying to tell me something, Ms. Brooks? Just thinking about proper restoration procedure. She smiled. Step 1. Understand how it broke. Step 2. Gather the right tools to fix it. Step 3. Make it better than new, Emily finished. Which reminds me, I have homework to finish. You two can handle closing up, right? She was gone before either could respond, leaving them alone with the Mustang and 20 years of choices that had somehow led them right back where they started, but this time with the wisdom to build something that could last. So, Mike said, pulling Catherine close, about that house next door. Above them, the shop lights flickered on automatically, triggered by the AI system Emily had installed. The Mustang's chrome caught the glow, reflecting back all the possibilities that came from understanding not just how things broke, but how they could be made whole again, scars, memories and all. 1 year later, the old drive-in theater looked different in daylight, its renovated screen gleaming white against the summer sky. Where weeds once grew through cracked pavement, classic cars now lined up in neat rows, their chrome sparkling in the June sunshine. A banner stretched across the entrance, first annual Sullivan Classic Car Show and Tech Innovation Expo. Mike stood at the center of it all, watching Emily demonstrate their new diagnostic system to a crowd of impressed mechanics and tech investors. She moved with easy confidence between a restored Chevelle and a bank of computers, equally comfortable, with torque wrenches and touchscreens. Your daughter's quite the presenter, Catherine's father said, joining Mike at the edge of the crowd. Reminds me of someone else at that age. He nodded toward where Catherine was giving interviews near the main stage, the Mustang gleaming behind her. She gets it from both sides, Mike replied, thinking of Sarah's patient teaching style and Catherine's natural ability to inspire. Though I'm pretty sure the coding genius is all her own. The Mustang held pride of place at the show, but not because of its perfect restoration. They'd decided to keep some of its battle scars, the carved initials, the worn driver's seat, the tiny heart etched behind the radio. Each imperfection told part of their story, a timeline carved in steel and chrome. "Dad," Emily called, waving him over, "show them how the manual override works." As Mike demonstrated the blend of traditional mechanics and AI assistance, he caught sight of Catherine wrapping up her interview. She wore a Brooks Technologies polo shirt with Sullivan's classic restorations embroidered below the corporate logo, her engagement ring catching the sunlight as she gestured toward the rows of cars. "The future of restoration isn't about erasing history," she was saying to the reporter. "It's about understanding it, learning from it, and using that knowledge to build something better." The crowd around Emily's demonstration broke into applause as the diagnostic system identified a complex engine issue in seconds. Mike watched his daughter beam with pride, then turned to share the moment with both him and Catherine. Her family, expanded and restored in ways none of them had expected. Later, as the sun began to set, the three of them sat in the Mustang, parked in space C-17, just like old times. Emily sprawled in the back seat, updating code on her laptop, while Mike and Catherine watched the first stars appear above the drive-in screen. "Think we did the right thing?" Catherine asked softly, her head resting on Mike's shoulder. "Keeping the scars instead of doing a complete restoration." From the back seat, Emily looked up from her computer. "Mom used to say that character comes from how you handle life's dings and dents." Mike reached back to squeeze his daughter's hand, then pulled Catherine closer. "Your mom was right," he said. "Just like she was right about me needing to keep that old yearbook. Some things aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be built upon." The last light caught the Brooks Sullivan sign at the theater entrance, the two names flowing together as naturally as the past had flowed into the present. Below them, Emily's latest diagnostic program ran silently, monitoring the Mustang's engine with a blend of artificial and human intelligence that was revolutionizing the restoration industry. But the real revolution, Mike thought, had nothing to do with technology. It was about understanding that the best restorations didn't erase the past. They incorporated it, strengthened by every crack and dent that had shaped them. Catherine's hand found his on the gearshift, their rings clinking softly together. In the back seat, Emily hummed along with the radio, the same station that had played their songs 20 years ago, now broadcasting through a state-of-the-art digital system. She had helped design. The Mustang's engine purred beneath them, a perfect harmony of old soul and new technology, carrying 3 generations of dreams into a future none of them could have imagined alone. But then, the best journeys rarely end where you expect them to. Sometimes they bring you right back where you started, but with new eyes, new tools, and new understanding of what it means to make something whole again. Mike started the engine, its familiar rumble now accompanied by Emily's software, displaying perfect readings across the dashboard's integrated screens. "Ready for a drive?" Catherine smiled, the same smile that had first captured his heart in auto shop class. "Always." As they pulled out of the drive-in, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of night mist blue, while ahead of them the road stretched endlessly with possibility, just like it had 20 years ago, but better, because this time they understood that the best restorations aren't about recapturing the past. They're about building a future that honors every scratch, every dent, and every choice that brought you home.